Welcome back to the Commuters podcast. Today, we are jumping right into the Star Wars prequels. I know it's been a long time since we had an episode, and honestly, with the things going on in the world, kind of just glad that we can get something done at all. But yeah, so we decided, as Philly D would say, we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to get right into the nit grit of the Star Wars prequel, or sequels. Gosh, sorry, I thought I was talking about bad Star Wars movies. So we're going to talk about The Force Awakens first. And who wants to kick us off with that discussion?
I have a pretty positive opinion, actually, of The Force Awakens. So, for the most part. So Force Awakens is, it was the start of a new era. A lot of people were so excited when, The Force Awakens was on its way. Since, we hadn't had like a Star Wars movie for the past 10 years. Was it 10 years? All right. I'm glad someone here knows.
Yeah, Will's an informed member of the podcast.
Informed. It was an exciting thing to see a new movie after so long. And now we have all this, we've made a lot of big leaps in technological filmmaking where we've improved. And then they proceed to just make A New Hope again. With a few changes. And those changes, here's the thing. I guess this is where I was going immediately, is The Force Awakens is not a very original film.
Yeah.
It feels very by the books. It feels very much like they were like, what do people like about Star Wars? And then they started throwing things at a wall and pointing and being like, this. And that's immediately where I start to see Force Awakens and it's multiple sort of good and bad.
I think they asked the wrong question, because if they'd asked what do people like about Star Wars, it would have been better than what it was. I think what they asked is what did people like about the previous Star Wars movies? What did they like about the prequel or the original trilogy that they didn't like about the prequels? And then they just named off a bunch of scenes and said, okay, we'll do those. At the core, I think you can point to major Star Wars movies and pick out what makes Star Wars. And they kind of had that, but like you said, what they really did was copy famous scenes to get a nostalgic response.
Write the story around things from the previous movies to make it nostalgic rather than just a scene. We have all those things with the Millennium Falcon that are literally just pointing at it and being like, guys, do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think also there is a positive aspect to the kind of reboot, remake, whatever you want to call it, though, is because it could be argued, hey, for people who are just getting, it's been 10 years since we've had a Star Wars movie. It's been 40 years since the original trilogy. What is Star Wars all about? And if you want to reintroduce that to a young audience who maybe they haven't seen a lot of Star Wars movies, or maybe they didn't really grow up with it. They're not as familiar as say we are, or other people who grow up with it. So it's kind of an introduction, right?
They didn't want to watch all those boomer movies.
Exactly. So I think it's very intentional. I mean, the Abrams and Kasdan and who were the writers, they've said it. We wanted to make a movie that was an introduction point while also kind of being a spiritual reboot. It's kind of you can't reboot it because it's Star Wars, but you can't go too far from it because it's Star Wars, but you can't be too similar to it because it's Star Wars. So you do Star Wars is such a weird thing to mess with, and it has one of the most rabid fan base that exists.
Absolutely.
There is a positive element, I think, to the fact that it's kind of a remake, even though to me personally, I'm been there, done that. I see the positive part of it. Obviously the audiences did too, with that was the highest grossing Star Wars movie ever. But there's also the part of the anticipation, right? We waited 10 years and 40 years to see where Luke's and stuff story goes. And then
not only was it super hyped up, but it was also incredibly secretive. They didn't let any slip up until the movie started showing.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when that first teaser dropped, part of me was really disappointed that there were X-Wings in it. I was like, whoa, 40 years later and they're still using X-Wings? That's what they wanted. They wanted, we want Rebels, Empire, X-Wings. They wanted the original trilogy setting. That's where a lot of gaps in logic come from, because one thing that the new Star Wars movies do worse than the prequels and the original trilogy is get you to understand the broader conflict. What is going on? So it's like, oh, this is like the New Republic, but also the Resistance is fighting the evil people because the New Republic won't fight the evil people. Only the Resistance will. But what are they resisting if they're the power? So like,
there are some logic gaps. Yeah.
No, they really just wanted an excuse to have the Empire again.
Well, yeah.
Because how are we going to have a bad guy if they're not insert Nazi placeholder?
You know, I'll actually kind of like understand that to a degree, because the Empire, like in the original 3 movies, is a very like iconic force.
Yeah.
Like very iconic, like to the point where it transcends like other movies make reference to Star Wars all the time. I mean, it's become a cultural icon. I can see why they want to bring back the Empire. The problem I have with it is like, you know, Basil, and you know, you guys just said it's a big leap of logic. Like, why is there a new Empire and like the New Republic you just made won't fight it?
It's something the sequels have done a couple times where they just like tell you huge things like this in the opening crawl without explaining, like, oh yeah, the Empire's back and now they're powerful again.
But yeah, let's talk about kind of the characters, because I do think that there's a lot of positive in like the character and dialogue writing. That's probably my favorite part of this new trilogy, is just the interactions between these characters like Finn and Poe, and like even the way characters like Finn and Rey bounce off each other. I enjoy that. Like the dialogue, even like kind of like snappy and sarcastic. Yes, it's a little Marvel movie-ish.
It's really, I got like bad Avengers vibes, like Avengers 1 snappy dialogue vibes sometimes, which wasn't like a big positive for me.
I had no problem with the casting of anybody.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, the casting was excellent.
Yeah, and I think that's been the one saving grace of at least my perception of the new sequels as a whole, is or the sequel trilogy. All of the cast is incredibly passionate. You can see that through all of their portrayals and how hard they do stick to the director's vision, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
You know, they're right there, and they understood, I could tell at least, the gravity and the importance that came from becoming a part of the new sequel trilogy and trying to carry that torch. You know, it was a lot of pressure, and of course, things are going to be viewed in comparison to the greatness that is what came before, but they tried really hard, and I don't think any of them, even if their characters were written a little weird or their dialogue wasn't the greatest, all of them understood Star Wars, and that at least makes it a little better.
Yeah, you can tell that there's passion from the acting.
They didn't get one person that just didn't care.
Exactly.
Which I appreciate.
I think that's a really, really important thing to actually like say, is that like, yeah, I agree. When I did watch the movie, I recall like I even up to this point where we're at, like, you know, after seeing this is a blanket statement that I feel like I can say without feeling like I'm gonna spoil something as we continue to talk. But,
oh wait, yeah, can I just right out the gate, we're spoiling all 3 of these movies heavily, so
oh yeah. I meant it more so that like from a discussion standpoint, I definitely think that in all 3 movies, the cast definitely tries their best.
Yeah,
that's something that like I'll never fault the actors. I may not like Rey as the series goes on, but goddamn, I don't hate Daisy Ridley for her attempt at it.
The standout on that front to me anyway is Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. Like, I think he easily is the best character in my opinion from this whole sequel trilogy, and I think he does the best job at like kind of making you buy into his character, like selling emotion, and like as far as a villain goes, I think there's a lot of really good ideas behind him and executed decently well. Even he's the only character, and we'll get into this, but he's the only character who has an arc across the trilogy, and like whether or not you like the way his arc ends, he at least has one.
Yeah,
that makes me like really bummed out, considering in the first film I didn't like Kylo much, and then he would become like, you know, that he would create that arc that I'm like, I like this character now. And on the flip side, I'm like sitting here, I'm like, you have a character who is perfect for an arc. Someone who could experience things and give us a perspective we should have in Finn, because he is a stormtrooper. He is a character that has all the potential in the world to be very interesting. And in the first film, I'm like, all right, I get it. He's someone who just he's finding a reason to fight back against the people he just like tried to escape from. And then he has no arc ever again, and he almost doesn't even matter really from that point on.
Yeah, exactly that. So, there's the thing about the original trilogy where Han Solo wanted to die after the second movie, because Harrison Ford, because he felt like Han Solo didn't really have much to do in the third movie. Like, his character didn't really have anything else to do, because he kind of completed his arc of becoming a good guy by the end of the second movie. Absolutely. And I kind of feel like, had Finn died at the end of the first movie, that could have been a much more effective use of his character. I mean, you have that option, or you build off his character, which... they picked the worst of three options. They could have built off his character or killed his character, and it would have been effective. Or they just did what they did and said, nah, he just stays the same and he just keeps running in circles for 2 movies. And then happily mows down his brethren.
Who we establish, by the way, that stormtroopers are taken from their homes at birth.
Some part of me felt like they didn't care because there's some total whiplash there, because he does mention all that at one point in a scene I forget who he's talking to about it. And that's in Force Awakens too, where he's like, it was in a conversation with Poe or Rey.
I think it was Poe.
All right, yeah, he even talks about it, and then he's like, "I'm gonna turn around and start shooting them."
There's this thing where, like in the first movie with Finn, for the most part, everything, like every stormtrooper he kills is kind of out of self-defense, especially in the beginning, and even at the end, he goes to rescue Rey and like. They only kill people out of self-defense. I don't think they really kill any stormtroopers when they go to rescue Rey.
Not that I think of.
Finn doesn't really do a whole lot of stormtrooper killing in the first movie. And it's mostly about, like, and he actually has an arc in the first movie of, like, he wants to just run away, and he doesn't have any cause or anything to believe in, and then it's him getting kind of a cause and something to believe him in the end, and that's kind of his arc. And it's completed by the end of the first movie. When he, like, goes and fights Kylo Ren and, sacrifices himself, even though he lives, even though he got a lightsaber down the back, which is another discussion. He has a solid arc, and then they just do nothing with him.
Let's course correct a little here, because we're still on the first movie and our perceptions of that. Let's talk about, just because I'm interested in hearing, how do you think it was done? How do you guys feel the pace and introduction of all of our characters was handled?
I don't mind it. I think it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say it's great, because there's a few moments where I'm like, can we go? Can we move? Because it's a little weird, like the pacing in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Got a boyfriend? Cute boyfriend?
I'm actually kind of on the more positive side with that. I actually think that's one of the things that the first movie does extremely well, is kind of roll out all these new characters. Like in the beginning, you get the villain Kylo Ren, and then you get Poe, and then Poe leaves, and then that connects later to Finn, and then you go back to Rey, and like it kind of, I think it does it in a very efficient and like kind of like high octane. Like, I mean, it's very J.J. Abrams, you got to keep things moving. But that's one of the things I actually think they do pretty well, is just kind of, at least the first movie. We'll get into bad pacing in the second movie. The first movie, I think, is easily the best paced of all 3 of them. And is one of the better paced Star Wars movies that exist.
Introducing all the characters.
Yeah, I think it does a very good job at that. And then, like, you get this immediate chemistry, like, between Finn and Poe, and between Finn and Rey. Like, there's an immediate kind of chemistry between the writing and the acting that I really, like, I dug that. It was the kind of a thing when I was watching that movie of, oh, this is actually really great, except it's the same thing I've seen before, like, from a broad strokes perspective. Like, there's a lot I liked about it, and that's why I said going out of it, I was like, okay, that is a good foundation to build off of. And, man.
Yeah, that's what the whole movie really is, a good foundation to build off of.
And I think it would have been at worst forgivable, and at best just a fantastic stepping stone if they'd done a couple of things differently during 8 and 9.
Well, yeah, and that was the thing, right? For this movie, and this is a common argument throughout the sequels while they were coming out, is people would always say, well, it'll make sense when you see the next movie. Like, these things you have issues with, they'll come together. That's why they're mysteries. Like, if we get into Rey's power, so at the end of the first movie, Rey fights Kylo Ren, she beats him in a fight, and there's a few things, like, this doesn't bug me as much as it used to by one metric, in that Kylo Ren was just shot by a very powerful laser in the side, and he's bleeding profusely during this. So, like, he's pretty beat up already. That's actually not the part that bugs me the most. It's when Rey uses the Force,
like Jedi mind trick?
The Jedi mind trick. She has no idea before this what the Force was. So, essentially, what the story's leading us to believe is that the Force just taught her how to do a Jedi mind trick in her mind. The Force just did that.
Right.
So now the Force is like a being that thinks and gives, like, I don't know, I always saw the Force as like kind of a connecting energy, you know, like how Yoda describes it, instead of like some kind of like deity that's like, oh, whenever I feel like it, I'm gonna make something happen.
If you read the novelization of The Force
Oh
Awakens,
gosh,
you
no.
find out that Rey really downloads all of Kylo Ren's training as he's interrogating her, which makes her as strong as he is in the Force.
Wait, is that
the way that they explained it?
Yeah, I'm not making.
What?
Ooh.
That's so stupid.
wait?
She pulls the Matrix. I need to fly a helicopter.
She downloads his training.
Nice.
That's
I
great.
hate. I was gonna say, you know what explanation I would have been like totally cool with, and it could have been part of the overarching story. Is you could actually take time to like look at what the Force is in a new way, to kind of like say, oh, the Force is an evolving it's not a creature. I'm sorry, but like I was gonna say creature in like a metaphorical way. It's an evolving creature. It is not constant, and you could talk about the idea that like it is possible for the Force to speak to people in different ways. I mean, they allude to that in other movies anyway.
Yeah, but you have to bring it up.
Force being metachlorians. Yeah, I know. We're saying hypothetically, if they brought it up, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been a really interesting plot point because
the way that, Force is all metachlorians too. You see this all the time. These little communities of small like microbial life forms.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's good that they distance themselves from the metachlorian thing.
They had to.
Yeah,
but
like
they could do interesting stuff with it if they just took it outside of the. I don't know. You got to do something with metachlorians. Either put it in a closet and ignore it, or you try and make it better. And I think they could have done either better than what happened.
The thing is, they put metachlorians in a closet and ignored them, which I'm okay with because I think metachlorians are really dumb in my opinion. But they didn't treat the Force, because the idea is you take the Force back to what it was in the original trilogy, which is like it's this kind of mysticism. It's like this spiritual thing. But they didn't do that. They actually turned it into more of a superpower thing, and more of like a magic. Like I know in the originals it's kind of it's like wizards and magic, but they turned it into like a Harry Potter magic instead of like where it's kind of just like there are parts, especially in the next movie, that I'm just like, am I watching a Harry Potter movie right now? In the main characters, there's no kind of like reverence for it anymore, except, and we'll get into the next movie because I think the next movie has the most to talk about in terms of the Force.
The most to complain about, maybe.
Well, man, if I ever thought a movie could be topped in things to complain about, I think that's a pretty solid amount of discussion on the first movie. Let's kind of.
I have one more point.
Yeah,
I think they're very well done. With like, they make everything look like it really hurts.
Yeah.
Like behind the scenes, they put like most of like when the stormtroopers get shot on by like a laser or something, they like yank him backwards on a wire.
Things do definitely seem like they've got more impact.
Yeah, it really looks like it hurts, and I think it's really well done. It's my favorite part of the film.
Well, I was going to say, I do think a positive, and this will go throughout all these movies, is they all look fantastic. They're all shot super well, and they all have amazing special effects, amazing practical effects, and they look great. Like, and that's something that nobody can, even the last one, they all look fantastic.
Because that was one thing I felt that we did need to touch on is these films from a technical standpoint are not like bad. Well, there's some things we'll talk about probably in the next one. Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to it. But like, yeah, they're very visually like gripping films. They look fantastic. You can tell the money is there. Like,
yeah.
You can tell they cared.
Han Solo, they did him okay. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah. It's fine. His death is fine.
Yeah.
It's
like Harrison Ford said, there really was nothing left for Han Solo. He wasn't supposed to be a general or really even a hero in other than name alone. You know, he wasn't supposed to be a heroic figure. There was nothing left for him other than to die a martyr.
Well, I also think, like, even if people want to complain about the movie killing him off, Harrison Ford wanted it to happen so bad, they probably just gave it to him.
Yeah.
Because he went on, like, late night shows and stuff. He's like, yes, I got them to kill me.
Which is never a good look for your movie.
So, like, he's just fed up with the whole thing. And I would blame him personally more than the movie. him being dead is a problem, which I didn't think it was.
I didn't think it was at all. I have more of a problem with how they handled the in-between space, because it's kind of like, oh, so him and Princess Leia was just kind of a fling. Afterwards, they had a kid, they stayed together for a few years, and then just split. Oh, wow, that's a great, satisfying ending to, like, the one of the better romantic stories ever in movies.
No, didn't it say that, like, Kylo Ren killed people and then Han, like, left because he was depressed?
Yeah, something like that.
It was, yeah, I think Kylo went bad, and then because of that, that kind of soured their relationship, which I guess, I mean, just going back to it, I'm not super familiar with what happened between them, and I wish they would have explained that a little bit more, or at least
I think Han just kind of went on his own thing to, like, you know, go back to smuggling stuff and whatever.
She says, or he said, I went back to what I know, and then she's like, we both did, because, like, she went back into whatever, being a general, and he went back into smuggling. And it's like, because they couldn't cope with their son becoming bad, which does beg the question of why they're just deciding now, like, years later, to try and help their son. Because I find that, like, I don't know, like, that's oddly defeatist.
I actually think that this is one of the few examples that the new trilogy does of, like, I can kind of understand that level of, like, we see this attempt in the second movie where it's kind of, like, playing up this more, like, man, dude, life really gets you down. It really hits you, and your perspective on everything really changes. And I think it actually works better for the two of them, because it's like your son just became, like, you know, from your perspective, just became a murderer, essentially.
Yeah.
And he just turned on a dime out of nowhere one day. And, like, now he's part of the First Order, too. It's a big thing for two parents. There's a reason why, like...
Especially ones that were as non-committal as Han and Leia, because say what you want about both of their characters and their just flat-out morality, I don't think either of them were really suited to being parents, which is exactly why Kylo was left with Luke in the first place.
Yeah.
They kind of just set him off with Uncle Luke and said, all right, we don't know how to exist together.
I mean, as long as Chewbacca's around, I think Han would make a fine dad.
Yeah. Chewbacca is somewhere between the cool uncle and the family dog.
How do you guys, like, what are some final thoughts plus, like, recommendation on whether or not this movie's worth it for the Force Awakens?
For Force Awakens, I would say definitely I'd recommend at least seeing this one, because it's a great example of, you know, going out of this movie, you can imagine all sorts of stuff of what they're going to do with the trilogy, and if you haven't seen any of them yet, you just see this, that hope, the new hope that movie brought for the trilogy is more satisfying for me personally than what they did after.
Yeah.
There's a lot of coolness to be had, and it's still fun for me to go back and try and think of how certain things could have been different, and, you know, how they could have took the series. So yeah, I'd say out of, just because I like to put arbitrary, completely irrelevant rating systems on things, out of 10 cheeseburgers, about 6.5.
Do they have cheese and onions?
Yes, yeah, special sauce.
I would say personally that if you don't really care about Star Wars, don't bother with the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
But if you do like Star Wars, I would say you should watch it. Just to experience it. There's some really great pieces in there. Like we didn't talk about the symbolism at the very beginning of the film, where they have like the big Star Destroyer. It's over like a moon or a sun or something, and they have the whole piece where the Star Destroyer is about to like it like kind of represents like darkness as it goes over. Covers it, and then right before it gets covered up, the ship that Finn is on launches off the Star Destroyer.
Oh yeah, there's also a little bit of really cool symbolism at the end with when that sun that like, so the Starkiller base is draining all the power from the sun, and it's kind of this red light, and it's slowly going down, and as Han Solo's talking to his son, they have that conversation. It gets slowly darker, and then like he gives Han Solo the lightsaber, and then he, right as the last bit of light goes out of the sun and it's just completely dark, then he kills Han Solo. And it's kind of like this symbolism of all the light leaving Kylo Ren. I thought that was very effective from a visual standpoint. But as far as, like, for me anyway, I definitely think this is... And I actually kind of disagree with you. I think if you're not a Star Wars fan, you might like these movies more. But at least the first two. I think the third one gets a little wacky from people who I know who aren't Star Wars fans who've seen all three of these. I think the first movie, especially, regardless of who you are, I think it's easily the most accessible, probably Star Wars movie besides the original trilogy. It's the original movie. You know, it's a simple story. It's fun. It's just a simple, fun, like, it's a Marvel movie. For all intents and purposes, that's what I kind of view it as. Just kind of a fun Marvel movie. You go, you see it on a weekend, you enjoy it. There's nothing deeper to it. Just a good time with some nice storytelling.
I think it's a fine movie by itself, but then you set in the realization that you will never get a satisfying conclusion to the next two movies. So it feels like if you want to treat it as a standalone, do it. If you really care about seeing the overall picture, that's it. That's how I feel. It's fine by itself.
Now we get to talk about the most undivisive movie ever made. Nobody argues about it. Everybody agrees.
Can we say that Rian Johnson is a master of cinema and move on?
I actually see that's fun. You know, this is going to be an interesting conversation because I think Rian Johnson is a very, very talented filmmaker. I just don't think he's a good fit for Star Wars. That being said, let's just jump right into The Last Jedi, shall we? You guys mind if I go first? Because I think I'm going to have a slightly different opinion than you guys.
Okay.
So
sure, we'll offer a rebuttal.
So by no means do I think it's a fantastic film. It has the biggest pacing issues out of any Star Wars movie I think that exists, except maybe the next one. But that's a continual theme you'll see from me because I think this is better than the next one. It's better because to me there's some very good moments in this movie that hold it up. That being Rey and Kylo's relationship, and for better or worse, the way they handled Luke, I kind of get what they were going for, and I do kind of enjoy. Okay, hear me out. I enjoy the kind of like rediscovery of the Force with Luke and Rey. I think it's kind of the way it's done is very enjoyable. That being said, the scene that causes Luke to go in that direction, I don't buy, and that's the biggest like cognitive dissonance that movie gives me. Because if they had made a believable reason for Luke to go in the direction he went, I would have been okay with it. But the problem is the reason is just not believable, and that really pulls me out of the movie. But that being said, I still really enjoy a lot of those scenes on that planet with Luke and Rey, and I enjoy all the Kylo and Rey stuff in that film. I do think that killing off Snoke was kind of just like there's a lot in this movie. That's Rian Johnson trying to subvert your expectations just for the purpose of subverting your expectations. That being said, there are a lot of aspects actually I enjoy from this film. I also think it's probably one of the best looking Star Wars films, bar none. I think Rogue One is the only other one that's as good looking as this one, like even amongst the better looking of the recent Star Wars films, especially like the salt planet with like the ships flying and they're kicking up all the red and it like looks super cool.
That was gorgeous.
But dude, in the trailers when I saw that, I was like, that's really visually cool. Like there's a lot of like this is probably my favorite of the three from a visual standpoint.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things I'm trying to like kind of say. Now, if this movie didn't have the Finn and Rose side story, like if they just cut that, one, nothing would change in the movie. Two, It would be a million times better. That side quest is to me one of the worst like executed B plots I've ever seen in a film, and it's so poorly paced and it adds nothing to the story and it feels so forced and ungenuine, and I don't think Finn and Rose have any chemistry the way like Finn and Rey had it, and so that whole detour to me is the biggest flaw of the movie. Now there are a whole bunch of other flaws mixed in there. Rey's ability to the Force, even though Luke doesn't actually train her, is one of my other biggest issues. There's plenty other issues, and I'm sure you guys will think of a lot more than me. I do like a lot of aspects of it, and I think that there was something really special here that they couldn't quite capture. It feels like a first draft, and I think they should have rewrote it a few times and narrowed down to what the good stuff was. And
didn't they say that they rewrote it a bunch too?
I think so. I mean, I still feel like this was like Brian wrote it in like an hour and was like, "Hey, Kathleen," to Kathleen Kennedy. He was like, "How's this sound?" And she's like, "Oh, that's good. Let's just make it."
She's like, will you wear a Forces female shirt on set?
Yes.
Then
Oh,
here
geez.
you go.
I didn't know we were going in this route already. Uh-oh.
Anyways, okay, so that's me. Okay, tear this thing apart.
Okay. I would like to mention that this is the first of a fundamental issue of the plan for whatever was going to happen just got thrown in the trash.
Oh yeah.
This is the movie where we know there was no plan for the trilogy as a whole, where they just did things. And also, I think it has another huge fundamental issue of, you know how we talked about how great the character interactions were in Force Awakens?
Yeah.
The characters aren't even together in
Yeah,
Last
that's
Jedi. They're not like Rise of Skywalker is a huge mess, but at least the characters are together on an adventure, and we can get them to. Because like, how are we supposed to care about them together if they're not even going to interact with each other anymore?
Well, Finn had to be taught that he can't speak up to authority. Remember that?
Oh yeah, Finn had to learn about.
Or no, that was Poe. Sorry, Poe had to be taught that he can't speak up to authority. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, even though Poe's like the third in command at worst.
You know what I think is amazingly, like, I guess at worst ironic, at best prophetic of the entire trilogy as a whole is Poe and Purple Hair's just rapport and dealings. It's so symbolic of how Star Wars just went.
Yeah.
The idea of the fans loudly asking, "Where are we going? What's the point? What's the point? Where are we going? What's your plan?" And then
I've dealt with a lot of fly boys like you.
Kathleen Kennedy and Ryan Johnson going, "Oh, that's cute. You want to know our ideas? Shit, do we have any?
Gosh.
Do we have any of those?"
Uh,
Because if you
No.
look at it from like what we end up learning, i.e., there was no plan other than to get to this planet and call for help and run, which was the plan already. There was no secrecy needed. You know, there really was no plan, and it's just a lot of secrecy for no payoff, which
Yeah.
is, I think, the idea of the trilogies as a whole.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things expressed, and a lot of fans were very adamant about at least knowing where it's going to be going because they didn't see any like payoff, and they were right.
Yeah, that's an issue. There's also the issue of once again treating the Force as a very like ridiculously overpowered magical thing, and I think specifically of the Mary Poppins scene, or at least that's what I call it, when Princess Leia, like, okay, we've seen the Force do some crazy things, you know, even in the prequels and stuff. We have not seen somebody get sucked into the vacuum of space and then while they're unconscious use the Force to pull themselves in. And then, not to mention, the door opens and there's no airlock and nobody else gets sucked in. There's a lot of editing issues I noticed too, where it's like, I kind of feel like it was a little like slapped together, the film was.
Do we know whether or not Carrie Fisher passed away after the filming of 8 or during?
No,
she did
afterward. After the filming of 8.
Because I could have swore it was during, and then
because they filmed some things for her for the next one.
That's the thing. It's very like, oh, whatever, the Force is whatever I want the Force to be at this moment in time. And that's kind of an issue where that's not really the point of the Force, is it's not your just constant get out of jail free card, especially with like just, oh man. And the explanation Ryan Johnson gave for that is, oh, it's like if a mother has to lift a car to save her child, you know, like it's like it's supposed to be this super whatever moment. But the thing he's forgetting is the reason the mother has the strength to lift a car to save her child is because it's her child who she's saving. It's not because she's saving herself. You don't hear stories
Right.
about mother who's underneath a car lifting it to save herself. And that's kind of the point, is that like they care so much about someone else that they can do like a Herculean thing. But it's like, no, she just saves herself unconscious, by the way. Like, that's one of my biggest issues, is she's completely unconscious. She's pretty much dead. And you're going to tell me that unconscious she can do that?
No, she's an ice cube by then.
Like, oh my gosh. And I know Star Wars has never really treated space as realistically as a lot of things. Oh man, there's so many just
Well,
leaps in logic.
I'm pretty sure the human body actually, before you die, has about a minute in space.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like it's not like an instant, you know, the floor is lava, you touch it, you die situation. And you can, you know, pseudoscience it away as, oh,
Yeah, but there's no air.
she used the Force to hold her eyeballs in, because I guess she was cognizant enough to pull herself back into the ship.
Yeah, so I did just look it up though, and it says up to 90 seconds you can survive in space.
Yeah, I don't think she was out there for longer than 90 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, she
I
was
do agree
also
with the
within-
airlock thing was pretty silly.
She also blew up though.
yeah, there was that
Right.
too.
She did indeed get blowed up.
Oh man, what a film.
The other thing is, This hurts me a lot because I feel like they're dissing one of my favorite ships in Star Wars, the Y-wing.
Oh yeah.
They sent out the bombers that fly 5 miles an hour, put them close together.
So
yeah, I was like, why since when? Since when have we had physical ordnance bombers in like a Star Wars movie?
Yeah, and I know
Oh,
what they
okay.
wanted from that.
Yes.
They wanted to have a B-17 World War II bomber bit where all the bombers get shot out of the sky.
yeah,
They even put World War II bomber decals on it because
yeah, it's what I call a Transformers moment because it's when the visuals are more important to them than the story is. So they're like,
Right.
okay, does this look cool? Yes, go with it. But it doesn't really make sense. No, it looks cool, dude. Go with it. And it's like, there's a huge issue with that in these movies. It's a J.J. Abrams issue. I've noticed in a lot of his movies. I recently rewatched his Star Trek movies too. He has this tendency to be like, okay, does it look cool? Yes. Okay, that is the most important thing. As long as it looks cool. The story is second to the visuals.
And I have no problem with a similar ideology, but there's a strong line to be drawn. You need to make sure that you understand
well,
it.
they're not mutually exclusive.
No. What I'm saying is that what's paramount should be, okay, yeah, is it logical? Perhaps not, but is it fun? Does it make the movie fun, and do people enjoy it more for having had it in? If yes, I think 100% you should go with what people enjoy and what's fun over what's logical. But that's not what this was. It was a, will it look cool? And I didn't have fun watching it because my suspension of disbelief was, I guess, it wasn't even in the same room as this.
It was so far beyond broken.
That's actually a really, really great statement, because then you could bring up the hyperspace ramming situation. That scene, when it happens, everyone in the theater will always say the same thing. Why haven't you been doing that up to this point?
Exactly.
And
it was a cool visual.
Oh, they addressed that in the next movie.
Which when they say that in the next movie, I was still like, all right, you're just trying to point down at that.
It actually made me more angry in the next movie when they addressed it, because like I was like, just pretend it didn't happen. Back to The Last Jedi. Sky, you've been pretty quiet.
Yeah.
You want to share some thoughts?
Yeah. So the reason I brought up hyperspace ramming is because I mentioned that I thought this is visually my favorite film of the three. Mm-hmm. I think some of the way things are shot in this movie, that scene in particular looks phenomenal. When I saw it, I was breathless for a second. I was like, it's so pretty looking.
I loved those like overexposed light traces as it went off into nowhere. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
It looks really good. Now, it's weird probably to hear me be positive about this movie, because I despise it. This is one of my least, I can't believe I'm saying this. It's one of my least favorite movies I've ever watched.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just defies all reason to me. Like, I recall the biggest problem I have with this is I find myself very bored. I don't like any of the subplots. And a lot of the characters who I was excited to see how they expand upon them, I realize they don't know what they're doing with them. That's the biggest, takeaway that I had when I was watching the film, is that I hate the way everything is going. It doesn't feel like I'm gaining this substantial next experience from what I just got from The Force Awakens. And this happens a lot in the subplot with Luke and Rey. Not to say I dislike the idea that Luke kind of has a change of heart. There's a lot of people who are like, he's a paragon of hope, he can't, blah, blah, blah. I think you can examine characters as humans.
Absolutely. He doesn't need to be like an archetypal, flat thing.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be this literal paragon of hope. You can treat him like a person. It's just the way they do it feels so snap and so, no conditioning at all. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like he built up to that moment. It felt more like he's just like, uh-oh, I see something bad with my nephew. I'm gonna kill him instead of talking to him.
Right. There's a lot of instances, and I think a lot of people bring this up too, where, a bunch of armchair generals like us of the film industry can just freely in our own environment sit here and bash a movie, and a lot of people will say, oh, well, do you have any idea of how it could have been better? I think, do you remember when she and Luke are on his planet on the little island, and she has that entire Vision Quest moment where she falls into the Sith hole and has the whole mirror thing?
Yeah.
one giant exposition flashback to fill us in on what happened with Luke and all of his students. She could have had a Force Ghost moment walking around the island back like 30, 40 years ago of when all of this actually took place, you know, Kylo's house and all of the students, and actually got to see Kylo in an environment where he wasn't evil. He was just kind of a Padawan learner.
Well, don't worry. They'll save that for the Disney Plus series.
Right. I think that
no,
would have been
remember-
better usage of the time.
John Boyega's, he's not getting Disney Plus. You can't stop him.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Sorry, I like John Boyega. He's
I
a
do
good
too.
man. There's some things I gotta say about the next movie when we get to it regarding him.
I have some other thoughts about The Last Jedi.
I had something too.
Oh, say
Yeah,
it.
dude,
Say it.
I never got to. I kind of went in a trailing thing, but there was one other visual thing I wanted to talk about, and that's the very, very, very derisive fight sequence in Snoke's.
Oh,
God.
gosh.
I think in the beginning I was like, this could be awesome. The way that room is set up is really cool. The visual, like the red against the red, is very striking and very like it's from an artistic standpoint. I was like, this scene could have been so cool.
Oh, hell
It
yeah.
visually is so great looking. And then you see the fight scene, and then you see they edit out the knife.
Yep.
Right.
And there's so much that's going on in that where I'm like, how do you fuck up basic film things like this? I'm falling in my chair. I don't even know how to feel about that.
It's like in our editing classes at Madonna, our teachers would have our heads
Yeah.
for like
Why did his weapon
All
just
of that
disappear?
Yeah. Also, why are you like, you're holding her. You have an opportunity to just attack her. Just do it. Also, there's like guards that just disappear.
Or ones that are just dancing in the background, like they're not actually fighting, they're just waving their arms around.
Right. They're just waiting for their choreographed moment to step in and then get slaughtered.
It's like those Batman games, you know, where you're fighting like a
Oh,
group
yeah.
of thugs, and then they kind of attack you one at a time, and you're like, it looks cool, but it doesn't make any sense. Like, why aren't they just all attacking me at the same time?
That's exactly how it goes.
Yeah, oh man. So, well, I'm back onto like a more thematic view of this film. Like, I see what Rian Johnson is trying to do from like a themes standpoint, and that's one of the things I do appreciate. The attempt. I should clarify that. I don't think it was done very well. But his theme of this film is essentially, you need to learn from failure, and you need to grow as a person from your failings and recognize those failings. And like you see this with Finn and Rose failing in their mission, and with Poe failing at the beginning or whatever. Even though he succeeded in his mission in the beginning, he just had a bunch of losses. But it's supposed to be a failure. And then you see it with like Luke failing to train Kylo Ren, and not Rey failing. Sorry, I would never suggest that she could fail at anything.
failed.
Rey can't fail. But other than her, everybody else has failed at something and has to learn from it. And that's kind of the point. And I like that as like a thematic thing of being like, oh, we have this very strong theme. I just wish he had executed it better. Like, because the problem is for every like story beat, for every, oh, Poe failed at this and now he's learning. Well, Poe wasn't wrong though. And if Poe wasn't wrong, the thing you're calling a failure isn't really a failure. And Finn and Rose, they failed because they were idiots. Like, I'm sorry. They trusted a random dude in a prison, and they parked their ship in the middle of a beach when they could have just parked it in the woods. Like, it's such dumb stuff. And you're like, okay, so how can I feel bad for these people when they're acting like just idiots? Like, I don't know a better word to describe it. That's the thing. Luke's the only one, and it's like the evens with Luke. He failed because he was going to kill his nephew who hadn't done anything. And it's like, I see people saying like, oh, well, you know, he was tempted to kill Darth Vader or whatever. And it's like, yeah, there's a big difference. I'm sure Luke might have been tempted to kill his nephew internally, but there's a difference between me being tempted, like, because I see my nephew, by the way, is turning bad, and then standing over his while he's sleeping with a loaded gun. There's a big difference between that.
Well, also, like, Darth Vader did horrifying things to a galaxy worth of people. Like,
Solo hasn't done anything yet.
Ben hadn't even done anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And
A
that's
single thing, except being kind of emo.
yeah, which is, as we all recognize that as the crime that it is, but it's not quite enough.
See, I feel like the thing they were going for with that was they're trying to be like, oh yeah, he was gonna consider killing Ben because he saw in him the potential to become a new Darth Vader. I'm like, no, it doesn't make sense. You're not developing these characters to tell me that story. It's a matter of like a lot of frustrating character developments is I think what really bogs down the film for me. You know, Basil, you just mentioned how we had pretty much everyone was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same problem that a dumb slasher flick would have.
Yeah.
Is that everyone is stupid. And I don't know how you get away with that in a movie that established characters already.
At least in a slasher fic, you get the catharsis as the audience of watching this very detached serial killer go ahead and slaughter all of these idiots. Because that's the way that horror movies get you to root for the killer, is everyone's stupid. And you don't care that they all died because it seems like they earned it.
Yeah, they deserved.
Really, I left episode 8 with that exact same mentality. I didn't care whether or not they all lived or died on that salt planet, because at the end of the day, they all made their mistakes and kind of earned whatever happened to them. You know, I wasn't on the edge of my seat thinking, oh God, I sure do hope, you know, Leia and the Resistance don't bite the dust, because it's like, they fucked up.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything else to say, or are we good to kind of get to...
Oh, I just wanted to mention two things. That before we got off the Luke and Kylo topic, that scene, I think, is meant to make Kylo seem like he's so evil that like it's kind of like how midichlorians is a way to make Anakin look like more powerful artificially.
Exactly.
I think it was a way for them to try and tell you that Kylo Ren's so evil, even Luke had to like try and kill him.
Yeah, it was just a way for them to artificially give a sense of dread to the character.
I don't think it was directly an insult to Luke's character necessarily. I think it's just really bad writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that is the thing I disagree with a lot, because a lot of people say, "Oh, this thing destroys Luke's character." I don't necessarily agree with that.
Oh, it does.
Because like once again we talked about, I don't think that I think it's okay to look at somebody as a human being, and that people do change and things can affect people. But it does make Luke into a much less likable character. And it also makes Luke into... I mean, once again, we get into... Everybody in this film seems like an incompetent idiot. and people shouldn't be acting like this. And that's where, like, that suspension of disbelief kind of goes away. So, I don't know. It's such a weird film.
Something I did want to bring up, I forgot about it until right now. Luke's character, the reason why I think it is completely accurate that Luke would have this like lapse of judgment in teaching Kylo an attempt to kill him. Luke, as far as we've seen him in the past movies up until this point, has been the quintessential Jedi learner, student. Who did he learn from? Ben and Yoda, neither of which were very good masters in their own right, because Yoda ended up teaching Count Dooku, who then fell to the dark side. Ben Kenobi, fucking Obi-Wan, taught the world's greatest Sith warrior of all time. It makes sense that Luke would have some real bad, like paranoid thoughts on, oh God, what is my student going to become? Who are my inspirations again?
Yeah, but the point is Luke kind of rose above all that. Like, at the end of Empire Strikes Back, he disobeys Yoda and goes and saves his friends. In the end, that was the right decision to make. And Yoda was wrong.
Absolutely. He learned that lesson in that instance, but I don't think that automatically would apply to this situation. Because he fought against the idea that some people are intrinsically evil and that they can't be saved. But it's different when you're directly trying to save your father versus I have an entire, multi-thousand-year legacy to uphold. Basically what I'm getting at is I'm completely fine with what happened. I just needed more for them to sell me on it and not have it seem shallow and contrite.
You mean that you'd be okay if they had executed it better?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that would have been really cool.
See, Luke could have done something to contribute to Kylo turning evil, but Luke would never try and kill him.
Yeah, I think it would have been interesting if Luke, in some form of effort to stay away from the failings of the Jedi, because you know how they all had the mentality of, no, you can't form attachments, and no, you can't look at the dark side in any capacity, because the dark side is corrupting, and you'll fall to the dark side if you even know what it is, they essentially on the dark side had the best sex education is abstinence training. Don't look at it, don't talk about it, and you'll be fine. I think it would have been really cool if Kylo started dabbling in some more gray areas, and Luke, attempting to be better than his elders, said, "Yeah, sure."
See, that would have been
Safely.
cool and interesting and unique and new, which are things that the new trilogy doesn't like.
It's nostalgia, boys. We don't need new. We want.
And I do think that a lot of people like to point out The Last Jedi as their attempt at something new. I don't really buy that. At the end of the day, it's just Empire Strikes Back in reverse, and I kind of stand by that. Like, literally, except the only difference is the hero doesn't suffer. Rey doesn't suffer at all.
Yeah.
Her suffering is learning that her parents are nobody, which, ooh boy, that'll get us into the next film. Okay, so any final... are you guys all ready for your final thoughts then?
Most WTF moment for me in that film was Snoke's bathrobe. He just walks out from the shower being like, "Oh, hey,
What's up?
watch out." I just had to get that out there.
Yeah.
All right. So recommendation, feelings, and such.
Stay away. Turn back.
Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Okay, that being said, I do think that it has some very nice visuals, and I do think that the music is actually done best in this one out of the new trilogy. Those are the two things that I kind of walked away with it from: visuals, the music, and then the only other main positive is Kylo and Rey's relationship. Other than that, their platonic relationship I would like to point out. Other than that,
Rey and Kylo.
I think it's a pretty mediocre film with very bad pacing issues, and I don't know, like, if 5 Kentucky Fried Chickens out of, 8 Kentucky Fried... No, that's too... 5 out of...
It's like 4.
5 out of 11 Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I definitely don't like it, and I don't think I'll ever recommend it, because I don't know. Pretty visuals and nice music aren't going to dissuade me from all the stupidity that is this film. Mind you, again, like you said, I don't blame Rian Johnson. I blame the fact that they picked him for this movie.
Why would you pick somebody like Rian Johnson? You should like, it's fine if he does his own movie separate, but why would you pick him for the middle of a trilogy?
Yeah,
unless you gave him guidelines to follow.
Yeah, you just said do whatever you want, whatever. Here's the racket or the relay, the baton. Yeah, that's like what triggers me the most about this trilogy is the absolutely giant lack of a plan.
It's okay, Basil.
No, I don't think Rian Johnson's a bad filmmaker.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
Knives Out is fantastic.
He demonstrated a lot of ill will towards criticism of his film.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Which I personally don't think I mean, obviously, we don't know any of these people, but I don't think I like him as a guy, personally.
Yeah. Well, that's fair.
I don't know him, of course, but
he's pretty much the worst person who's ever lived. We all know this. But we don't, I mean, we don't know him.
I think he's Satan's son, dude.
Whoa, no way.
Oh gosh.
Hitler was just a less bad Rian Johnson.
All right, well, we gotta get
You just ended your career, dude.
Hey, it's time to rise.
Cancel you on Twitter.
Guys, we all know that the third movie in the trilogy must have the word rise in the title. Dark Knight Rises, Rise of Shrek, the third.
Why is that when it's the end of the trilogy?
Because it's they rise, you know. They
yeah, but
Jesus rose at the third day, you know, at the end of the trilogy.
I don't care anymore.
They rise now?
They rise now.
No! All right, let's start right there. It's time for the third movie, the one we were all waiting for. We were like, how are they gonna fix this? How are they gonna...
And Palpatine's back in the opening crawl.
Oh, no. Oh no! All right. So anecdotally, I'm gonna open up with. So Basil, you mentioned how this third film gets a little weird with people who have never seen the previous.
Yeah, I saw this movie, by the way, with somebody who's only seen The Force Awakens and hadn't seen any of the other Star Wars movies.
Wow.
I saw this with someone who's seen the older films, but she did not watch the new trilogy. The moment that we get into the theater and we start watching, and then I see the opening crawl mentioning Palpatine with no explanation, he's just back and there's a message. I immediately vibrated angrily in my seat. And she looked over at me and said, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Palpatine's back." And she's like, "What's the problem? Weren't they building up to that?"
What's a Palpatine? Oh my god, wow.
Yeah, I was like, no, it doesn't make sense. Why is he back? There was nothing building to this. Oh my god, this movie sucks, and I already hated it from the beginning.
Dude, he offers Kylo Ren an empire even though he already has one.
You can have an empire.
Hey, I already have one. I'm good.
Right. My Death Star was way bigger than yours, dude. I don't know if anyone told you.
Yeah, mine was a planet.
Yours was only a moon. Peasant.
Oh my gosh. You guys, okay, so when I was watching this film, I don't think I've laughed more in any movie than I had. Like, this was like the funniest thing to me. I was cracking up in Palpatine.
It's funny. It hurts me.
It's like, yeah, you're laughing at watching a car crash, and you just can't look away. But it's hilarious because people keep slipping on bananas, and it keeps happening. And my gosh, I don't even know where to start with this film because there's so much I just absolutely love about it.
All right, I think it's important to note. Yeah, this film is very much a product of what Will mentioned. You mentioned it with the last film, how they threw it out. They threw the plan in the trash. This movie feels like they were like, "Oh yeah, guys, it was the plan all along. We knew what we were doing."
Right. This is the world's best cover-up.
Yeah, it feels like they're trying to make it feel super organic to what's going on. This is the plan, and you as the viewer realize, no, this doesn't. No, you immediately get dropped in to a whole new situation in the conflict. There is no connection at all, almost to the Last Jedi's like ending, because besides the fact that we know the Resistance is fighting the First Order. And now Palpatine's included, except he's not part of the First Order. He's his own thing. I immediately, you jump in and you start getting into that fun adventure side of things. Like, I recalled, this is the one thing I was like, thank you for at least putting our main protagonist together. Again, Will mentioned that. They're back together, and this is something I was like, I wanted this since the second film. I like when they're together. The chemistry between the actors is really good, except for the fact that throughout this whole movie, now I dislike the characters even more because they've just become plot devices, or they've either become plot devices or they've become like one trait. They don't have character anymore, except Kylo Ren. This is a problem through the whole film.
No, Finn just runs around shouting "Rey" the whole film.
No, I agree. Like, that's one of my biggest issues is I feel like this is plot device the movie. Like, it's just one thing after another. There's, like, the Sith Wayfinder, and then there's the dagger, and then there's this, and then Rey has whatever she can fly now in the beginning. And, because she's, like, hovering. So, I want to talk about Princess Leia real quick, because the way they use her... Now, I understand that she was dead, so, like, you're kind of in a bind. How would you guys have thought... Like, so, for me personally, I thought they should have just killed her off screen and started the movie with her funeral. I think that would have been the best way to handle it. You can tell... when she's talking to Rey that it's old footage and that they had to write Rey's dialogue around it, and it feels very hokey. This is very awkward feeling. Like, and then she says something about the droid or whatever. Like, it feels very forced, and you know that's because they had to write Rey's dialogue around the dialogue that was already done for Princess Leia.
Well, here's my take on it, is that if they killed her off screen, I mean, I think a lot of people would forgive it, but it's also like...
Heck, you could even open the movie with In Memory to Carrie Fisher, and then, that way, like, people would have been fine, and then
It was already a giant leap to begin the movie with Palpatine's back. It would have been no larger of a sin to begin it with Carrie Fisher is not back.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean,
but I also think they did a good job with what they were given.
I think they did the best they could have with what they were given. Yeah, I can agree to that.
I could tell when I was watching that, like, oh, that's like a video game NPC.
Exactly. That's exactly. I couldn't find how to describe it. That's exactly what it felt like.
Oh, video game NPC. Ouch.
Like, it's true though. Like,
yeah.
But I was also like,
even the way it's cut, the way it's edited. It like goes back and forth between like that like medium wide shot of Carrie Fisher and Rey, and it feels like in an RPG when you go to somebody and you talk to them, and it just like kind of cuts between that medium wide shot.
I mean, yeah, I don't really think they could have handled it any better though. Like, yeah. I think Spencer makes a good point though, is if you just like killed her off screen, like that would have been such a disservice.
They could just make it so that she didn't survive like the medical treatment of being sucked into space or something, as she was too old.
They could have, because they had that moment of her on the bed already. They could have opened it with that.
Oh, bro, I just realized something. This is kind of going back because I was thinking about like she could have died in Last Jedi by just getting blown up right there. They killed Admiral Akbar.
Oh yeah, we never even talked about Admiral Akbar.
No, Admiral Akbar.
The film is a little too intelligent for people like us. If I'm not gonna lie, it definitely goes above my head.
Can we talk about the proper name this film should have had? The Rise of Retcons.
Shoot.
I'm pretty sure they like took shots at every single thing in The Last Jedi
Yeah, pretty much.
as best they could have.
Like, they literally retcon Rey's parents, Palpatine, by the way. So they didn't just retcon The Last Jedi. They also retconned Return of the Jedi. So Rey's parents, they mentioned that whole space jump thing. They pretty much made Rose into a non-existent character. They, what else?
Which sucks, because, like, I really felt bad about how the fans treated her.
It's not her fault for her character being, like...
Exactly.
poorly
And
written.
Okay, here's the thing
it's
about
not like she didn't know that her character had no depth. You can see it in her eyes when people talk about Rose's like character progression in interviews. She wants to laugh in their face and say, "Oh, you want to tell me what you see? Because I don't see it."
Here's the thing about that, like the Last Jedi defenders and things will say like, "Oh, you Star Wars fans bullied Kelly Marie Tran off Instagram." Like, there's actually no evidence to support that.
I know that she left.
She left, but like,
Yeah.
there's no one has anything to show that it's Star Wars fans that bullied her off.
I mean,
They just use it to like defend the film.
Right, which sucks, because if she actually did face, random people attacking her, then they're just
Sure,
using...
she did, but not to the degree.
Yeah. I'm just saying that it sucks for them to use that kind of harassment as an excuse for, hey guys, be nice to us. Look what you did to her. The movie wasn't that bad.
I do wish they had given her another chance. Like,
Yeah.
taking another look at the character instead of introducing 3 new characters that all show up at one point and disappear.
Right.
Like, Poe gets that character who's like his mom/girlfriend from his past, and then like
His mom/girlfriend.
Carrie Russell is like 50. I didn't really understand the connection there.
I get what they were going for, though. Like, I'm gonna actually bring some
I
something
did-
to that.
Her character wasn't awful. It was just kind of
Yeah.
neutral.
Well,
I
She
also
showed-
felt it was compelling to talk about ex-stormtrooper. Again, this is something that they could have played with through the whole film regarding his past and
Yep.
where he, his whole situation. And I felt like in the third movie, they remembered that was a thing, and they're like, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
The third
Goddamn.
movie is 2 movies crammed into one. And I think that's
Yeah.
like if they had spaced out, if the second movie didn't exist, then you took the first half of the third movie and made it the second movie, it could have been all right if predictable. Like, I think it was pretty predictable, but it still could have been a better movie than what we got with the third. But I think the third's biggest issue is a similar issue. It's the reverse issue, I should say, of the Last Jedi. Whereas the Last Jedi's pacing issues had to do with slow and like being boring at moments. The problem with The Rise of Skywalker is it's way, way too fast. It's, in fact, I would call it too fast and too furious, because it's Fast and Furious in space. Like, it literally just keeps moving, and you have no second to take in what just happened. It's like, nope, on to the next plot beat, on to the next plot beat, on to the next plot beat. There's, like, I think there's like 2 or maybe 3 moments where the characters even, like, exchange words that aren't directly plot related. There's no breathing room. And I think that's kind of like one of my biggest issues in you can't focus on anything, and then you just forget about what happened last because a new thing gets introduced, and then they're riding horses on a Star Destroyer in space, and I'm like, what is going on? What happened to Star Wars? Why is it?
What is this fever dream?
Kylo in this movie, though, is easily the only thing that I was like, Kylo is the only character in this movie who is doing something and has an arc. He's the only character...
And it wasn't bad.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it was predictable, but just like it was fine.
I feel like being predictable was in his character, unfortunately.
I'll take predictable over whatever 8 was. The haha, we got you. It's all in the toilet. Didn't see that one coming.
Expectations subverted.
Yeah. I think this movie. The one thing I will say about this movie that I thought was very interesting from a storytelling standpoint, and it's one of those things that I wish we'd kind of had more of, was say what you will about Rey. I know no one likes her because she is a Mary Sue character who is written in such a way that she only wins. She does not lose.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was very interesting that this movie kind of plays with the idea of what their Force link does for them.
Yeah.
Like, I say what you will, as silly as it is for Kylo to somehow teleport a lightsaber so amount of distance away and pull it behind his back. But I think it's a very interesting plot sort of convenience and retcon. Yeah, it's convenience, but it's interesting, and it makes you think about the way the Force could be used. Something that, again, I thought that they were going to start with because of the Force Awakens title at the beginning of the trilogy. I thought they were going to go for like a let's examine the Force as well as looking at our old characters and blah blah blah. There's like another movie that could have been made here that would have been very interesting, probably, that examined that kind of thing. And that's kind of what I thought they were playing with. You see this even in the first movie of this like connection between two characters that like through the Force that isn't quite like everyone else. And it gives you a new perspective on how it works. But, at the end of the day, it's not elaborated on. Also, this movie features the Knights of Ren, finally. The guys that we've heard about since the first of the trilogy.
Oh, yeah, they existed.
Yeah, I got really excited because I was like, all right, this movie's going to suck. But at least I'll get to see these guys and see what their deal was. Because I was interested since, like, the trilogy opened. And I was like, who are these guys? They follow Kylo. Does that mean that they have lightsabers? Are they Sith technically? What's their deal?
We won't see them until Rise of Skywalker, where Kylo Ren will just cut them down by himself.
Mind you, I think that's like a very poetic kind of thing to like fight your own order, essentially.
It is.
But he beat the crap out of them without breaking a sweat.
Also, they didn't really do anything or add anything to the story. Like they were muscle. That's all they were. They were literally.
They're just henchmen.
They're just cool. They're like a worse version of General Grievous. And General Grievous isn't even like he's there to be like an intimidating enemy of some kind and have a cool fight. Except he at least has some dialogue where they had no dialogue. There's a stormtrooper. This is one of my I couldn't believe this was in a film moments.
Oh, I know what you're about
They're
to
walking
say.
down the hallway, and so I thought the stormtrooper said ghouls. Like he's like, oh wow, these people are like demonic or something. Like they're scary. No, turns out he said goals because he wanted he's like, oh, they're so cool.
Wait. No.
And
No way.
No,
That did not.
I looked into. He said goals.
Oh, dude. I think I only saw the film once.
Like hashtag goals.
Oh, you didn't need to see it again. That's for sure.
No, I did not.
It's
Rewatching it is not a good time.
One of the biggest parts that I actually arguably liked in the movie was when Chewie died, or air quotes died, when Rey was like getting all aggro in her fight and caused the thing to crash. I kind of wish they would have kept that.
That was like, all right,
because that
when that happened, I thought they did do that. And then I remembered that scene of where Chewie and Lando in the trailer together in Falcon, and I was like, oh wait, it's not gonna happen. Something about that, like, snap, sudden, like, boop. I was like, oh fuck, dude, they killed Chewie.
Yeah. Well, that's a problem with this film. There are multiple times
to the plot
where there's characters who look like they're about to die, and then they end up not dying. It happens. I mean, Palpatine's the first one. It's like, oh, he's alive. Haha, he wasn't actually dead. And then Chewie, and then C-3PO, and then Finn, or not Finn. What's his name? Kylo Ren. He gets killed, and then Rey saves him, and then Rey, she dies, and then Kylo Ren saves her, and then like this happens like so many times in the film, and I'm like trying to just pay attention. I get mad when fake outs are used more than once, and they use it like 8 times.
This movie would have been way different and way better if every single fake out actually happened for real.
Right?
If Chewie really died, if Kylo really died, the first
C-3PO?
time, C-3PO really died, and then Rey really died. It would have been an arguable end to the Skywalker saga. Yeah, everyone dies. Everyone dies, and there's nothing left to continue on, which means the tyranny of the Skywalker bullshit that's been going on for the past,
guys, she's Rey Skywalker now.
Hey, Lando's back, by the way.
Oh, can we talk about him?
Yes, please.
He's literally just like hanging around smoking a joint behind Denny's.
Right. And didn't he also allude to the fact that he boned Princess Leia?
What?
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I remember there being a thing where
I know
So-
what you're talking about. He has
But
a
also,
line
like-
where he's like, "She's lovely," or whatever he says it, and you're like, "Yeah, okay, we see what happened."
Yeah, so he's just hanging around doing God knows what by himself when he could have single-handedly recruited an army big enough to destroy the First Order the whole time.
the whole time.
Now, like, I understand. When Leia called for help, bro, I wouldn't say yes to Leia. But Lando, man, he's got a sweet space cape, brother.
He does.
I mean, considering he's a character that I wanted in since I was hoping he'd appear in The Last Jedi, and then he didn't. I was like, honestly, after seeing that, I'm glad he didn't. But then he appears here, and his character.
So
It was good, finally. Like, something good.
check
But it was also weird.
It
I
was
was-
weird, but like it's like when you're in a place you don't recognize, full of weird people that you don't recognize, and then you see someone, you're like, oh, thank God,
yeah.
I know
That's
that face.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it. That's all he is. He's just a
What do
familiar
you mean?
face.
I recognize all these likable characters, such as Pilot, who is Ace Pilot,
Not
and Jedi Girl, and Storm X. Never mind.
Storm X.
Storm
Gosh.
X.
There's a big issue with Lando too at the end where it's like so there's that ex stormtrooper girl.
Storm X is my favorite mutant, man.
There's that ex stormtrooper girl, and at the end Lando goes to her and he's like, "Well, why don't we find out about your past?" And it's almost like it's a little weird the way he says it. And apparently,
That's right.
So,
Wait,
check
did
this
you
out.
take it as being sexual?
Not really at first, but like I still see why people kind of get that weird vibe. It's also kind of the way he talks, but I didn't really take it that way at first. There's
I
my
Why can't
biggest
you just accept he's got a smooth voice, dude?
yeah, my biggest
He's just
issue
smooth.
is so apparently that character is his daughter. This is from like the wiki or something.
Allegedly.
Now, no, this is confirmed. This is like canon. That character is his daughter. This is in like the Star Wars guide released by Disney, the official like extension of this movie. That character is his daughter.
Oh, nice. And he's
you,
like,
you
just flirting
completely
with her.
just like you did nothing. Like, why would you? Why did this have to be the way it is? And then not only that, there's Finn. These are multiple threads of the movie that like you have to go to extended media to kind of get answers for. There's Finn in the beginning, him and Ray, and they're all sinking, and he's like, "Ray, I have to tell you something," and you're like, "Oh, dude, this dude's about to profess his undying love for her."
No,
like, right?
it's his. Isn't it his force
Well, I
sensitivity?
just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. We all thought that he was going to tell her that he loves her.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Like,
Yeah, I got that weird vibe.
is
I
there
didn't
any
to it.
other conclusion to that? Is there any other conclusion to what he was
There's
saying?
literally a dialogue scene where Poe's like, "Oh, what? You got to tell her when Poe's not around?"
Yeah. Is there anything to suggest anything otherwise? No. And it turns out in a tweet, by the way. They answered this in a tweet. I believe it was
No.
Abrams said, "Oh, no, he was just going to tell her that, he's got the Force too."
So stupid.
No.
There's nothing special about that.
And the
This
worst
movie-
part is, they bring it up like 3 times in the movie. He's like, "Yeah, well, I got to tell you this. I'll tell you it later. Actually, I got to tell you this." And then they just never answer it in the movie.
I don't get why they. The bigger problem I have with that is why'd you keep it secret when you already made the Force such an unimportant, but at the same time plot device thing. You could tell me anyone had it, and I would be like, "Okay, I don't care. You've already butchered its purpose and importance." It's like a bunch of people not understanding why certain things were important to the universe. I don't want to feel like I'm one of those guys that's like, "Oh, well, you don't understand the Star Wars lore," but like the Force meant something. It was something that felt like an important thing in the trilogy that you've been aping the most. Do you get what I mean by that?
Aping?
Like, this whole trilogy, this whole new trilogy, has been building off the back of the original trilogy,
Mhm.
and somehow made the Force feel less like a interesting, dynamic, and I don't want to say enigmatic force, but it's it's something that's sort of, I don't know. There's something special about it in the original trilogy, and then this film or this trilogy just makes it seem like it's super, like, Basil, you said it yourself. It's like superpowers. It's like, haha, no respect for it anymore.
Yeah, because if everyone's super, no one
No
will
one
be.
will be.
You know what's ironic? I just realized the day we're recording this on is May the 4th.
Is it
Yeah,
really?
It
I'm
is.
watching
What?
I just realized that. Not planned, by the way. This just happened. That's the will of the Force right there. I'll tell you what. Anyone else have anything else to add about the rise of the Skywalker, of the revenge of
Kylo's? Oh yeah,
of the return
Kylo's
of the
death
Jedi.
is the biggest stupid thing in the movie for me.
I agree.
It really pisses me off. I really, really hate that our Mary Sue got away and gets to become a quote-unquote Skywalker. And we have to deal with the fact that the only good, well-developed character, developed character, is dead.
Okay, no, he had to die, dude.
I get that, but like
I disagree.
I would have preferred an ending where.
Could you imagine?
He killed his dad.
He killed his dad.
The point is, it's about
walk away.
If you're gonna make a redemption story, I don't think that the character, like, I think that's a very like cultural thing in whatever society where it's like, oh, if a character has committed a certain amount of crimes and they get redeemed, they have to die. And I kind of like, you had a chance to do something new here. Be like, no, we're gonna step away from that and be like, this character did those awful things, and yes, he'll have to make reparations, but he doesn't have to die. It's like Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender. They could have killed him and taken the easy way out, or you let this character grow and become a new character. And like, I think that separates. Like, you could have done something really great.
I think you've really like hit the nail on the head there. Not the reason why I personally felt is because it actually would have tied into a prevailing like overarching theme that, again, the very trilogy, they wanted to point fingers and be like, we're like that. Vader technically got his redemption too. You know, Anakin did have a redemption.
He did.
He was horrible. He did a lot of terrible things.
A lot worse things than Kylo Ren.
Worse things than Kylo Ren. And yes, he died, but he redeemed himself at the very end. He realized what needed to be done. It would have been a really nice sort of like, full circle experience to see that Ben too could come out of all that and redeem himself, and then be able to stand and realize he wants to be a force for good for the galaxy as opposed to what he became.
It would have left Luke's teachings to have in a light that was actually positive.
It's like, hell, you
like
could
he actually did something.
Yeah, it would have felt like it meant something.
Yeah,
mind you, his death is fine. I'll accept it, and I can see the importance of that too. But it's like you also handed it off to a character who has not earned anything.
Fair enough.
Now, and I know this is kind of like whatever, because they did have them kiss at the end. It's like, you know what? I wouldn't even, if they just went full in on the like that and just be like, whatever, you know what? They're a couple now. And at the end, Rey and they're like they break the Jedi conventions by being two Jedis who get together and starting the new order of Jedis. Like, whatever, dude, that's different. That's new. It might have been weird, but like, I would be like, go for it.
It technically wasn't new.
Yeah.
Because
if you mention expanded lore, I'm gonna shut this thing down.
Hey, I'm going to, because Thrawn Trilogy would have been cool to see theatrically.
Yeah, I know.
But that's what Luke's Jedi Order in the expanded universe was. It was literally that.
Yep.
And so it just feels like, again, it's like Disney was like, well, we gotta do it our way.
Well, no, he has to die, right? He's not allowed to be redeemed unless he dies. And because that's the way things are done. I can imagine a Disney board member sitting there. Maybe a writer was like, wouldn't it be cool if like maybe he didn't die? Did Darth Vader live? Well, no, exactly. I mean, also I want to mention the music. I thought it was the worst edited Star Wars music I've ever seen. They throw like themes that don't belong at moments for no reason. Like there's the part where so Luke is like lifting up, as the Force goes, mind you, he's lifting up the X-wing, which
let's not.
And they play Yoda's theme, and I'm like, what? Why is it?
Yes, because Yoda lifted the X-wing in Empire.
Yeah, but this isn't, Yoda's not anywhere in this scene. This is just Luke. They're just literally playing that because, like, yeah, this is like that scene where an X-wing was lifted in Empire because that music was playing. Remember that? Even though that's Yoda's music specifically, that's not Luke's music. Why didn't they play Luke's theme when he lifted the X-wing? Like,
I won't fault them in that. I think that's just a personal taste thing.
No, that's literally a thematic music thing. I don't think that's a personal taste thing because I watched a little bit behind the scenes on this. The reason they play that theme and they said is we wanted people to think about the scene when Yoda lifted the thing. It's literally the same thing. Well, the reason Lando's in this movie. It's we need a familiar face. It doesn't add anything to the story. It doesn't add anything to the soundtrack. It's literally just nostalgia. It just makes me frustrated.
It's a callback, a reprise, whatever you want to name it. I think it's fine.
This whole trilogy is that, though, I guess.
It's
like,
it's a requiem.
A requiem? You're a requiem.
But can we talk about the goat? How Luke caught a lightsaber? So he can use the lightsaber and the Force, even though he's a ghost. So why didn't he do anything helpful?
Hey, to be honest, though, I don't blame JJ for that one because that was Rian Johnson in the last movie. We forgot to talk about Yoda and how he used lightning as a Force ghost, and it's like, wow.
True.
So they did set that up in the last movie, so doesn't make any sense.
Even that one, like that was more of him like influencing nature.
Yeah, which
I guess is still useful.
I think it's a lot more useful.
But no, it's not as useful as holding the lightsaber.
It's like, at this point, then why aren't they all the Force... Like, that's what I thought was going to happen at the end. I thought we were going to get an Avengers Endgame portal scene where just all the Force ghosts...
Wait a minute. Yoda whacked Luke on the head with his cane.
He did.
So he can interact.
Wait, he did in the original trilogy?
In Last Jedi?
Oh, in The Last Jedi. Yeah, so there you go. With his ghost cane.
Yep.
I mean, as much as it felt good to have Luke catch his lightsaber,
Yeah.
it's still really dumb.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That's the whole theme of that movie. Like, as good as it feels in the moment, it's stupid
Yeah.
when you think about it.
It's like doing drugs, am I right?
Yep.
Basically.
All right, Nancy Reagan.
Joe Reagan.
You mean Joe Rogan?
All right, should we get final thoughts?
Yeah,
Because
let's
I feel like
give
we're-
some final thoughts. Let's wrap this baby up.
All right.
Okay, I'm just gonna say it outright. The sequels are not canon in my book. I'm sorry.
Amen.
If you like them, whatever. Your opinions can be trash.
Yep.
But I don't like it at all.
That's fair.
Give me my Luke and Mara Jade arc, please.
Oh, dude, that'd be dope to see actually in a real film, but we're never getting it.
Too bad it'll never happen. And
Too bad Mara Jade doesn't exist.
Disney will think about this for a minute too. My apologies, to branch off of the movies and more on the fate of Star Wars as a whole. Star Wars will never leave Disney's hands ever.
No.
Unless Disney somehow tanks hard enough to start selling off IPs, which I don't think is ever going to happen ever. Star Wars is Disney's forever.
Yeah, that's the future. As far as The Rise of Skywalker, I think it's the worst of the three. It's
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. I think The Last Jedi at least attempts things, whereas The Rise of Skywalker to me is just like one of the most contrived and forced films I've ever seen. It almost has zero character or plot. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of narrative beats that they wrote down on a PowerPoint and had to hit. The pacing's just so bad.
Whether or not we liked anything from the movie yet,
Yeah, we talked about some stuff we liked.
I gotta mention the giant Palpatine lightning scene, like blasting starships out of the sky with the lightning. That was cool.
Yeah, it looked cool.
That reminds me of like the scene where Palpatine's trying to get ready to kill him, and me and my friend, we watched it in theater together. We were imagining, because you know how Palpatine's like, he's almost like, it feels like he's narrating the scene.
Yeah.
He's like, she wields her lightsaber. We were imagining him to be like, she foils my plans. Wait, and you hear like script flipping. He's like, wait, who wrote this? That whole thing is really dumb, by the way. The Sith essence transferring into her.
Yeah.
Which, gosh, I can't.
Because that's how.
I feel like if we keep going, guys,
Yeah.
we're just gonna keep going.
Yeah, this is a chunky episode already. Yeah, so I'm gonna once again I want to wrap up my thoughts. I think there are some moments in it that are fine, but overall I think it's the worst of the three. I think that it's the absolute epitome of having no idea what you're doing. The last movie had, at least Rian Johnson had something he wanted to say, and in the first movie they had a very clear idea of what they were doing, but in the last movie they were scrambling to get something done. And they literally had 2 years to do it, which was the dumbest thing. They should have delayed the movie, but that's neither here nor there. I wouldn't really recommend it to anybody. Star Wars fans or non-Star Wars fans alike. Like, I think there's almost nothing to gain from this movie besides a fun child, like kids. I'd recommend it to kids. I think kids like this. It's there's lots of colors, there's lots of action. It moves super fast. It's not very boring. So that is one positive. It's not a boring film. So yeah, I'd recommend it to like 5-year-olds. I think they'd enjoy it. Yeah, it's G.I. Joe, like the cartoons, they're just made to sell toys. That's what this was.
And then Palpatine came back, and then Rey healed Kylo Ren, and then Kylo Ren healed Rey.
And then they kissed.
When you say it, it just sounds even dumber.
But it's like, I'm all the Sith. Oh yeah, well I'm all the Jedi.
It's literally just, I heal you, you heal me, I heal you. Like, oh my gosh, oh man.
As a whole, I don't like the trilogy. The only one I think has any like substance that made me want to rewatch it was Force Awakens. And every time I rewatch it, now I'm going to think, "Oh right, Rey's a Palpatine." I'm gonna sit there and think about that and be like, "I hate this. I can't believe that this is where we've gone. Where they thought that this was gonna go.
There is one thing about that. I mean, the more we think about this, the longer we're going to take.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that everyone thought of is that Palpatine had sex.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Apparently, it's a clone of Palpatine who was Rey's father, according to like the novel or something.
So did he have sex or no?
So OG Palpatine apparently did not.
Okay.
Wow,
okay.
that's disappointing.
He was still the wizard version we all knew and love.
Wait, but you
Yeah.
couldn't imagine him saying "do it."
Do it.
Oh no.
Oh gosh.
Oh,
Anyway,
God.
As a wrap up, I would say, ow, my heart shot lightning through the heart. Go watch Mandalorian.
yeah,
That's my 2 cents.
man, what a time to be alive. We got to see all of our favorite franchises ruined. This has been the last episode of the Commuters Star Wars special. We finally finished it. Hey, luckily we can kind of release it close to May the 4th, so I guess Star Wars will kind of be in the zeitgeist a little bit. And yeah, look forward to some new types of content and more episodes from us moving forward. We're going to try to put out more than we had before. We're probably going to do more of this, stay-at-home format because we all have to stay at home, etc. But yeah,
We love you guys, but we're not gonna risk Rona.
yeah, we ain't Ronaing today. It's not Rona of the Skywalker.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Star Wars sure feels like a virus right now.
Oh. Hopefully everybody stay safe out there, stay healthy, and subscribe. Maybe.